All right, hey, welcome to another episode of Forging the Sword here in Europe, here at JMRC. I'm Colonel CJ Kirkpatrick, Commander Operations Group at the Joint Multinational Readiness Center, joined by my good friend, Colonel Mike Ziegelhofer, Commander of the 3rd Brigade, 1st Cavalry Division, the mighty Grey Wolf Brigade. Sir, if you could introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, Mike Ziegelhofer, Commander of Grey Wolf, and we just finished up an awesome rotation out at CBR 2607 where the team got a lot better. We were tested and got a lot better. The brigade is just finishing up a 9-month rotation in Europe, where we were the brigade on the contact layer. So we were in Poland and stationed through the Baltics. And I can tell you that our soldiers are working hard to get home the right way now, and they're excited to get home.
I bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I haven't spent some time at Fort Hood. We'll see what they think about the summer once they get there. It's not quite like the summer here in Bavaria.
No, the weather here is very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, and you had a glorious rotation. One of the nicest I've seen.
Well, we earned it because, as I mentioned to you while we were out there, the team in the Baltics in particular and in Poland experienced an extremely harsh winter, and we did all of our collective training through that winter period.
Yeah.
And so if you look at the photo books of platoon, through company level training, it's all done in knee-deep snow, skating around on the ice in their tanks and Bradley fighting vehicles. And so I would say that we were extremely fortunate, but we earned it.
I follow all you guys on Facebook to kind of get a sense of what you're up to before you get here. Yeah, whole lot of snow pictures coming out of Grey Wolf. But speaking of coming from kind of east to west, tell us a little bit about what you wanted to accomplish with Grey Wolf here at JMRC during your rotation.
Yeah, so a couple of things that we were trying to get after, and for different audiences too, right? And so I think one, our mission over here was an assure and deter mission, and so with relationship to organizations, countries, potential adversaries, anybody looking at Grey Wolf, what we wanted to do is use this as an opportunity to put our lethality and our readiness on display. Because we were confident in that, we back ourselves on that. We worked really hard as an organization over the course of the deployment to get better in terms of lethality and readiness, and so we wanted to come out and kind of show our stuff. From a unit perspective, we had a lot of things we wanted to work on, both on to make ourselves better, but also on behalf of the 1st Cavalry Division and the Armored Force. And so, in particular, we wanted to test some new warfighting concepts. We think about the way that the Armored Force design is moving, where Blackjack and some of the other Armored Brigade combat teams have been through the National Training Center and kind of developed what we think is maybe the best look or the right look. We wanted to lean forward and adopt those same types of formations and test them in a different environment over here in Europe. We were able to do that effectively. I think for every one of the proposed changes to include the MFST, the multifunction strike troop, which we had play in the rotation, the infantry kind of 2x6x2 companies with the separated mounted and dismounted platoons with their own platoon leadership, and the 2 mortars attached to each of those companies. What we didn't get to on the battlefield was the armored strike platoons. We just weren't there yet on the armored strike platoons, but we got to everything else and were able to see everything else at play. We gave them all the right tools to come out here and train effectively. One of the other things that we really wanted to do was to turn our BICE into what it might look like in the future. And so we all know that the BICE is coming out. It's going under the IEW battalion, and I don't think I've really figured out as a force is what that's going to look like, what the relationships are going to look like down to the brigades between those MDAT SUs and the MDAT Ts. And the brigades, but we wanted to at least test it in theory, recognizing that it'll be easier than a real look because they are our people and we have existing relationships with them. But we wanted to cut them out in that structure and provide that capability up at the division level for them to turn around back down to us, just to kind of again, test out what those relationships might look and feel like, so that we can inform the rest of the force about, hey, here's some things that we might look at. Here are some potential shortcomings or shortfalls or
Okay.
opportunities.
And Mike, when I think this is a fascinating question every brigade commander in the Army is struggling with, right? As you talk about, training differently to fight differently, and you mentioned, MFST putting together MDAT team that works for a division in this rotation under the 3rd Infantry Division, flying UAS, MFST being multifunctional with EW, ideally some counter UAS. All these other things, right? And we already know it's hard enough, right, to train an ABCT to do the fundamentals. So I think fascinating, because you were a disciplined organization. I mean, this was a disciplined organization, able to execute the basics day to day in contact with warrior. But you had to do a lot of new stuff. So if you could help, kind of describe how you balanced all the new things the Army's asking us to do, some of which are defined in doctrine, many of which aren't. A lot of experimentation and innovation with those fundamentals and basics that I think and you could disagree with me, but I think are still key to success, right, on the battlefield. Certainly key to success here. You gotta win the knife fight with warrior, right?
That's right. Yeah. So, not maybe the most exciting answer here, but the right one, and that is that we looked at this thing like we need to arm masters of their craft with new tools. And so the same discipline associated with mastering the 12 armored fundamentals, we think applied to every new tool that you're going to put in the hands of one of our soldiers, and they could figure it out. And that's the approach that we took. And so we started with the basics and didn't let go. And so some of you're like, well, wait a second. We came out here and we displayed the ability to use some of these tools, particularly in the MDATs. I mean, we were getting lobs and cuts off of the EW and then mixing in some drones and doing some sophisticated things. How did we get there? And I'll say we didn't overly focus on it during our train up. Now we did incorporate all of those elements into platoon and company live fires in different places. And so we gave people reps, but we certainly didn't train the mastery on it. We trained the mastery on the basics, making the assumption that putting those tools in soldiers' hands who knew, how to be great soldiers, that they would figure out, how to use the tools in the right time and space, Met TC dependent to make the best use of them.
Yeah, so interesting, I think, because you talk about, and I think we're getting there as an Army, right? We're starting to stop thinking about these things as one-offs that go fly the UAS and then we're going to go train. You talked about, I think Grey Wolf on their way here and through your deployment. This was part of everything.
Everything.
Every echelon that we think of, squad, platoon, company, SUAS was part of it. Thinking about counter UAS, thinking about EW was part of every collective event.
That's right. Everything.
Yeah.
And so, we were out there just getting people used to hearing drones and feeling the pressure that a drone feels like when they're shooting their individual weapons. And then, the team got a pretty big kick out of teaching people hard lessons with drones with either water balloons or the baby powder balloons attached to them during squad live fires and some of the collective training we did, platoon sticks and live fires and company sticks. So incorporated into everything that we did. And what I would say is, and this is less about how we thought about it and what we did, but more about how we were able to do it. Where we are in Europe, because of the work of so many people that came before us and some of the people that are here now, leaders like General Tillis and General Taylor and General Felty and yourself, and we have an extremely permissive training environment. And I'm talking about here at JMRC, but I'm also talking about where we came from in our FOSS sites in Poland and through the Baltics. I mean, guys can throw up a drone at any point in time, literally deconflicting through text chats with the other leaders on the base. Like, hey guys, that's mine. That's my drone that's up. Don't worry about it. And so, because of the flexibility that we had, all that we were missing as a Grey Wolf team was the capability. We didn't have any of the tools. And that's where General Tillis and the 7th ATC team came in with the lending closet And as soon as we unlocked the lending closet, we put some tools into soldiers'
No
hands.
pun intended, but yeah, I'm tracking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we went out there and were able to get after it.
Yeah. No, you're right. I think it's great. I mean, I know the whole Army's trying to figure this out, but the days have passed of when you and I were young, right? That you had to submit your raws 72 hours out to, we're past that. We got to stay past it in terms of authorities and permissions. Okay, so and Ziggy, you've mentioned MFST a couple of times, and I think unique to this rotation, you actually had an MFST from a separate brigade, and then you had kind of the origins or the beginning of what you intend your MFST to be.
Right.
I guess the question would be like, what putting them in the dirt, different dirt here than NDC, putting them in the dirt out here. What kind of stuff did you learn in terms of how those things are organized, what capabilities they have, where those capabilities came up short, or just those things that we can only learn in contact with the OPFOR and the CTC.
Yeah, I think, well, we talked a lot about the MFST and some of the armor forums that were on, and all the armor brigade commanders getting together and having conversations about what we think it looks like, what it does. And Brian Frizzell in 1180 did a great job of putting together an MFST, selected a fantastic commander who I think won the MacArthur Award this year. Yeah. She was awesome. And put them to work out at the National Training Center in their last rotation. And they had some, I wasn't there, but I would probably classify it as, at least moderate success with the formation out at the National Training Center. And so we were looking forward to, making some improvements there, maybe even in taking all of the knowledge that they learned out there and putting it to bear, or putting it to the test here at JMRC. And I think what we learned was that we've got the concept right, but she doesn't have the capability, right capability. She can't see far enough. The electronic warfare capability that she has can't sense far enough. Yeah. Now, I think the mobile protective firepower that she has and she brings to be able to secure herself we've probably got about right. I think that her having the capability, a mortar capability, or when we think about it in the 1st Cavalry Division, wave concept terms of, detect. She's got okay detect, the right kinds of detect, but not the right. Yeah, she
you kept saying you can't see your flat.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, that's right.
You can't see your boundary.
Yeah, well, can't see my forward boundary. We had some problems with that. I think every armor brigade commander over the last couple of years has said that once or twice. But so we think she has the right. I say she because the commander is Kate, fantastic person. But we think the MFST had the right types of things, but didn't have the right range on them because. What happened was we would have to put her so far forward within our framework that she was in a knife fight all the time. Yeah. And the types of soldiers that it currently takes to run some of those systems, aren't trained infantrymen or armor. I mean, I think that probably needs to shift when we talk about how do we train differently at home. We got to put these tools in the hands of warfighters. We can't think about these folks like rear D or rear area soldiers who have these capabilities anymore. They got to be able to execute those same functions for the team on the front lines in constant contact. And so,
I do. I mean, and I think we talk a lot about here that. There's a type, and maybe it's an MOS, but it's certainly a skill set of a little bit of a 17, EW capability or skill set or thought process, plus a 25. Like you need a guy who understands network and waveform and radio stuff,
right.
And a 15 who understands airspace and understands how to manipulate that third dimension, but also an 11 Bravo infantryman or a 19 kind of cavalryman. Like you kind of need all those things in one person to really pull this off.
100%. No, Yeah, and times 30 of them. Yeah, right. Because they all got to be capable of thinking through all of these systems and the impacts that they could have and where things need to be and all that kind of stuff. So, anyways, I thought that Brian Frizzell and the Ready First team did really a hell of a job putting together a fantastic team, and it had all the right elements. When it got into this complex terrain at JMRC, what we learned was the range, wasn't far enough out in order to really affect the fight that we like we needed them to. I still couldn't see my forward boundary.
Okay. But you got close. And I kind of want to talk about kind of a specific moment in this rotation. So, Grey Wolf Brigade, we had a specific enabler here, the third of the 504th from 173rd with some partner-enabled UAS capability. Initially, and we can talk about that in terms of how that felt in a training environment when they were initially in opposition to you. But it's particularly the second half of the rotation for about 4 or 5 days. You got about as close as any brigade commander in the Army has in the last decade of actually being able to see your forward boundary. You got close, right? So all that, we're talking several hundred UAS that have, that ranged out to where, almost to the limit of where you could shoot. Maybe not your MLRS, but certainly your cannon. So it gave you, as a brigade commander, I think, honestly, probably the first brigade commander of the Army to have hundreds of kind of fine fix finish or sense and strike options. So if you could, enormous opportunities. If we could take a little bit of time to explore this space in terms of how you as a brigade commander visualized it, how you described it, what you tried, what worked, what didn't work.
Yeah. So a couple of things. You said maybe to speak initially about what it felt like when we were in opposition to this team. So just, for everyone listening, we fought against this team in the defense. We were in the defense for 4 days. And then this team conducted a demonstration for 2 days, and then we fought with them.
Right.
We were on the offense, OPFOR was on the defense, and we had this capability for about 4 days. And when we talk about this capability, like CJ mentioned, hundreds of drones. I think they claim to have 600 unique drones. That range everywhere from the typical FPVs, like we kind of are used to seeing, all the way up to some pretty sophisticated repeater drones that extended the range of their other drones in the fleet. Some heavy droppers, some things that could carry supplies well forward, 30, 40K forward on the battlefield. Heavy munitions droppers that could carry, I think, 6 to 8 rounds that were capable of top-down mobility kill strikes on armored vehicles. And then different ranges of reconnaissance drones. They had a short version, a medium version, and a long version, but unlike what we've done to ourselves over the last couple of years, these weren't short, medium, long for what we're used to, right, where we're thinking 2K, 4K, 8K. No, these were like 10K was the short, 30K was the medium, and the long could go farther than you would ever need it to as a brigade commander. And it was less about, what I thought was neat was it was less about the capability of the individual system, and it was more about the network of the systems and how they got them all to work, how they figured out how to get them all to work together, and specifically some of these repeater drone capabilities. So what did it feel like fighting against them? Well, one, they could, we talk about a transparent battlefield, like it felt transparent.
Yeah.
Soldiers felt like they were always being watched. And so we rolled out into the box on day one, and we knew how important it was going to be to find cover and concealment. I think, if you remember at our combined arms rehearsal, I told the team over and over again, dig, move, or die. Like that needed to be the expectation that they had and the mentality that they took out, knowing that we were going to face this team. And I don't know that it really felt real for them until, that first night of processing casualties as a result of drones either dropping things on them or calling in fires. And so what we saw was a pretty drastic, almost immediate change in thought process and behavior from our soldiers, right? Because by the time that we jumped on a helicopter and flew over the formation on like training day 3, you couldn't find the brigade.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
They had disappeared.
I've seen a lot of ABCTs here, and Grey Wolf actually hid.
Well, we were actually pressured into hiding, and so what a great opportunity for the soldiers to kind of feel that like sense of anxiety and just to know, and what it drove them into, those types of disciplined behaviors that we know that they're always capable of. And I'll tell a quick story about the mind of the soldier with respect to these drones. So one of the 3 504 soldiers that had this capability during the mid-rotation, I had an opportunity to pull him aside and have a conversation with his young E5. And I asked him how his rotation was going. His big smile on his face, and he was very excited about all of the things. He was getting to fly every day, and he had all this capability, and so he felt very powerful. And I told him how great of a look he was giving our team. And at the end, he looked at me and said, "Sir, I don't know how you're going to win in this fight." And I thought, "What do you mean?" And he goes, "Well, with your big armor vehicles, how are you going to win against this? It's like too strong of a capability." That's the effect. That's how significant the capability was out here, and that's the effect that it had. It had our own soldiers doubting our ability to go fight and win.
Yeah.
I think the work that we did from that point forward to change our behaviors and to find ways to really get after the fight and really take it to the enemy, change their minds. And I had to remind them that it's a pretty powerful army, a pretty powerful country, and we're figuring out these problems on a rapid rate. And we owe the formation, we owe them the protection of some of these counter UAS systems.
Yeah.
And we owe it to them quick. Otherwise, the mobile protected firepower doesn't make it into the
absolutely
doesn't make it into the fight.
Yeah, and I think you and I talked about, and I think it was a fascinating story the Army still needs to tell for all brigade types. I think force protection may be the number one concern for our young company commanders. As brigade commander, I need you to stay alive.
Yeah, we talked about it.
Until you can be decisive in this 90-second, 5-minute window.
100%.
And that's really like the hardest problem that we need them to solve.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you, Ziggy. I think I think the Army we're getting better, and we're figuring out kind of this layer protection and counter UAS, but the basics matter, right? So getting our soldiers in the mindset of, I think you dig, move or die. E-tools need to come out. We're going to start digging holes for ourselves. Maybe the most unsafe place to be is on the vehicle until it's time to bring the hammer into the fight. And it's fascinating to watch Grey Wolf go through that. And I'll share a vignette with you as well.
Yeah.
One of your young, I think it was a company XO I was talking to out in the box. I was telling him, I was like, "Hey, you're welcome for this fantastic weather." And he looked at me and he said, "Sir, I need it to rain. I need it to pour rain to put all these damn UAS on the ground so they stop hunting us." But that complete behavior change or a completely different way of thinking was fascinating to see in a training environment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
interesting.
So tough to experience, but great learning opportunity. How
Tough
about the
to
other
experience.
way? How about when you got to fight it?
That's right. Well, wow. I mean, powerful tool. Powerful tool. We talked about it. I wrote the note down here. We talked about it in our in the brigade MCP as it was like riding the dragon. We said just the capability was overwhelming.
Yeah.
At first.
Fascinating. Like too much information at first.
It seemed like.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we didn't know. We had to quickly understand and learn by having conversations with the unit and bringing them onto the team and all this kind of stuff. But how to talk to them so that they could be as effective as we needed them to be, so I could give them as much freedom as possible in certain moments, but then to still be able to mass effects in time and space in the time and at the space of my choosing. I didn't know how to juxtapose those two, like the intent to make both of those things happen, but we worked through it. And so we get 600 drones, 2 companies worth of operators, all kinds of capability that comes over. We thought about it initially like intel and fires.
Sure.
Where the drones were capable of find, fix, and finish but there were cases where we would want to limit the round expenditure on the finish because we had other probably more efficient means to do that.
Right. And the COG's never nice because he just makes it harder with the controlled supply rate.
You gave me a controlled supply rate on the dropper munitions. So as I gave the team, the first bit of intent, we thought like, hey, Intel fires. We talked to them with the tools that we have. ICSM, like all of our fighting products.
Yep.
And what we learned was, and you helped me see this as well while we were out there, but all of the tools that we have, the doctrine that we have, it was built to manage, this,
right,
like an environment of scarcity.
Yeah.
Where we only have a couple of these things to use, and so we got to put them in the exact right places to have the effect that we want to have at the right time. That wasn't our problem anymore. Like we could affect all kinds of things all at once. We didn't,
faster than you could cognitively process.
faster than I could cognitively process. And so we had to think of a different way to approach the problem set. A lot of it we did by, frankly, by powering down decisions down to the lower level.
Right.
Giving the battalion commander a lot of weight to be able to decide what goes where, when, and we just talked to him in terms of effects. We kept some of the language associated with our fighting products. We give them HPTLs by spaces in the battlefield. We didn't talk in terms of NAIs, TAIs anymore because we didn't, those were too limiting.
And so much everything was an NAI.
Yeah, they were too limiting. So we just talked boundary to boundary, phase line to phase line, gave them an HPTL off of it, and then gave them some strike guidance for the HPTL. Like, hey, this is number 1 on the list. And if you find it in this quantity, it's, no matter what quantity you find it, it's an automatic strike. If you find it in this quantity, it's a strike and a call for fire back to the guns.
Right.
Or
in terms of that fix and then finish.
In terms of the fix and the finish. And then even on the finish, like I said, we wanted to limit them sometimes. And so we would say, hey, droppers, if you, tanks, not that tanks were always very high on the HPTL, let's do something different. ABVs. So you go out there and find an ABV. I don't want you spending 12 rounds to finish. I want you to spend 1 round to fix and then call for fire. And so we're trying to limit them in those ways. And then when we wanted to mass, the way that that language had to shift was I took the broad controls and made them more narrow. Telling them what to do wasn't going to be helpful to them, but telling them what I wanted to,
the outcome you wanted to
the
achieve.
outcome I wanted to achieve, was very helpful to them.
Hey Ziggy, so and I'm going to get a little heretical, right? I'm at a CTC, been here for 2 years. Doctrine is our watchword. Every slide I show you, right? I got a doctrinal reference on it. But I think something you said was very, very powerful. The idea that most of our targeting processes in the Army create efficiency to manage scarcity. When you're in this different environment, some of the tools broke down. I mean, it's certainly in terms of like talking to you, hey, just make a more detailed ICSM. That's terrible coaching, right?
Right.
You don't have a big enough spreadsheet for this. So what are your thoughts like in terms of as you fought this problem? Like, where do we go from here? We got a data point of 1 with the brigade. I would argue enabled the way this is the way we want to fight. Like, there's all sorts of little things, but the big picture of you can see, as you talk about, I can see my forward boundary.
Yeah.
I got enough effectors that I can do things to the enemy in mass, scale, and speed that I've never been able to do before. How do we manage it? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have all of the
initial reflections.
Yeah, I don't know if I have all the answers, but some initial reflections. So I think the way that we communicate intent broadly to battalion commanders, we need to think about doing it to these companies in the same way. I mean, the more broad intent you can give them, the more flexibility that you could give a capability like that, I think the more impactful they can be for you. You can still work to dial them into certain situations to mass effects in time and space. But generally speaking, you want to give, when you have that much capability, you want to give it as much flexibility as you possibly can. You don't want to limit it. When you limit it, we we tried to limit it once.
Yep.
And not only did the operators get extremely frustrated with the process because they knew they could be doing more,
Right.
and we were holding them back. But then we found that discipline went down in that organization as well when we tried to limit.
Yeah.
And when we would open the door for them and just give them intent-based orders, they tended to do a lot better for us. It's still, things strayed. Humans made human decisions, but they did a lot better. Now, what do we need to do? I think we think about fires and intel in the right way. We do it in such a way to align, the minimal number of assets against the one thing that's the most important.
Get the most bang for our buck.
We just need to broaden the perspective.
Yeah.
We just need to broaden the perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have one set of eyes that can look at one thing at a time. I have now 100 that can look at
almost everything. Yeah.
And not necessarily all the time, but a lot of the time. The team is thinking through pretty hard what having that capability meant and what some of the doctrine and things that might have to change in order to best get the most out of that team.
Yeah.
Or get the most out of a capability like that. One of the things that will help, I think, significantly is finding a way to integrate all of the data that comes from all of those different sensors into some kind of common.
Right.
I think we have Lattice. We're doing a lot of work on the Army's doing on Lattice, but what we found was we had not only do we have hundreds of those drone sensors, but we also brought in 7 different types of other kinds of sensors into the rotation, both acoustic sensors and RF sensors and KU band radars, and we brought in a bunch of different stuff, and we got tens of thousands of data points, every hour, I think, coming into different things. But what we weren't able to get to was we were never able to take all that data and put it in a time and space in a way that would enable me or subordinate commanders to make better decisions faster. And so, and that was the same was true with the drones. It was a tremendous capability, but we didn't always have the best picture of what was going on. It was hit and hope a little bit with pushing the intent down, and then based off of the BDA feedback and reporting that we would get back.
You're in the strike zone.
We kept thinking we were in the strike zone, and I think we were to a large degree. But yeah, you can see where and this organization that we had flying this capability for us, tested, really high end of the spectrum in terms of quality, right? But you got to think in terms of our force. You're going to get you can't always give that much trust down to the formation. There are points that we're going to have to, and it will enable us if we do. But we're going to have to find ways to also to bring it in a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, Ziggy, this rotation is just it's one data point, but it's a case study of what we imagine brigades are going to have to be able to do in terms of, yes, there were mission command challenges and software networking challenges and, cross-domain, like all those things are true. But you had a density of sensors, density of effectors. You had lots of ways to kill, lots of ways to see, all the way out to your forward boundary and, frankly, beyond. So a couple of interesting things that I think your brigade, that Grey Wolf has to give back to the Army is everything that everyone imagined and tried to do in a simulation, this brigade did it live.
We got to do it, yeah.
And I think doctrine didn't, there's some doctrinal things, 5060 have some tools and some ways that we think about planning and how that plan turns into execution and how we get the feedback and then replan started to break down at the pace and scale at which we could do things. I think is a fascinating data point. And I think as you highlighted, we talked a little bit about earlier in the conversation, you mentioned standing up that MDAT. Beyond the people being in the right place and the division helping the brigade ped things and provide what a JMRC we sometimes call intel ready to eat to brigades. I think what we demonstrated with Grey Wolf is this is beyond the solvability of the humans.
Right.
There's too much coming too fast without some artificial intelligence, some advanced analytics to not make decisions, but to certainly refine that quick enough, right? Because certainly I think all your Intel professionals could have sat there all day with all those acoustic sensor hits, and maybe in a week you would have you got a decent picture of the fight you fought 6 days ago, right?
Yeah, no, and it wasn't just them. And I think they got all the best minds on this thing, if you will. I think we had teammates from 3 Core dialing in, and everybody was dialing in trying to help the team make sense of the data. And what we found was we got a little better when we got some. We could see a lot of UAVs flying around. We couldn't tell blue versus red. And we couldn't do any of it fast enough to get relevant information down into the hands of leaders that could make better decisions on time.
Yeah, but finally got a case study in the Army.
We do have a case study,
right?
Yeah.
So now I think we got to get back to the schoolhouse and say, hey, here's where doctrine has some challenges, and we can give real feedback in the dirt with the real tactical BCT. This is what this actually means. And when we talk about, everybody use AI, well, that's fun to say, hard to do. But I think we have the case study of, well, here's what the problem is that it needs to solve.
Right.
Awesome, man. Well, so based on kind of your experience in Europe and JMRC, like what's next for Grey Wolf? How's this inform your way ahead back at Fort Hood? I know luckily for you, you're just getting started with Grey Wolf. You got plenty of time to continue to mold your organization. So what are you going to do, home station? How are we going to train differently? What do you want to emphasize based off kind of your experience both here at JMRC and in Europe?
Yeah. So I am lucky to have another year. I think that, again, boring answer, but we've got a couple things going on for us this year. We're modernizing.
Yep.
We're fielding a bunch of new equipment, and so we've got to spend a lot of hard work, do a lot of hard work to work that into the formation and learn our new equipment. We've got a pretty heavy responsibility in that, I think we'll be the only divisional brigade left on the post. So we've got a lot of hard work to do to stay connected to the community and be great teammates on behalf of the division. And then with every second we have left over, we're going to do what we did over here. We're going to control what we can control and get back after the basics. Because we'll have a new team reset after the summer. And so we start right back over from the beginning and start from the dirt up. Now, here's what I think we have. We have a formation full of E5s and E6s and first lieutenants now that have this experience from JMRC. And so I think from the brigade perspective, if I'm drilling them on the basics and getting the armor force fundamentals right, these guys have the muscle memory of what it looked and felt like, and they'll work that into our training plan and through collective training. We'll drive some of it where we can based off of the resources that we have available to us back at Fort Hood, which is an awesome place to train. But the boring answer is we're going to keep doing what works for us.
Yeah,
and we're going to keep focusing on discipline and keep focusing on doing the basic things right. Like I said, Fort Hood is an awesome place to train. We talked about how permissive the training environment was for us over here. We talked earlier about Grey Wolf Brigade got really used to being able to just send up a drone,
get after it,
and just flip on a EW platform with a sensor out in the out in the training area to be able to triangulate it and locate it and do those kind of things. I think the team back at Fort Hood is getting closer and closer to giving us that kind of permissive environment in the training area. And so how will we think about training there differently? I don't know that it'll be different from our experience over the last 7 months, but it'll certainly be different than anything these guys are used to doing at Fort Hood.
All right. Hey, Ziggy, so, in terms of, acknowledge everything you're going to get, basically back to the basics at Fort Hood and continue to kind of integrate, again, these new ways of fighting, and it's just combined arms. It's not necessarily more complicated or harder. It's not unique. It's just new ways of achieving mass, new ways of achieving decision. Coming a little closer in, kind of more reflecting on your rotation. I guess, and maybe you can give us a grade. But was JMRC, did we deliver? Was this a good laboratory in terms of what you wanted to accomplish with the brigade here? And Cameron, what's the most important thing you're taking away from your rotation?
Yeah, awesome opportunity to train here at JMRC. What an outstanding learning laboratory you've got out there. The complex terrain, the thinking, really deadly animated with all of the toys that it had to bring to the fight, capabilities that it had to bring to the fight. And then all of the permissions and that you've got set up to really make it a permissive environment, so we could do the things that we want to do and try to get after the learning objectives that we brought in. Just awesome. Again, back to Warrior, their team did a great job of keeping pressure on our formation over the course of 10 days. Didn't really ever feel like they let off the gas, which we appreciate very much. The most important takeaway from the Grey Wolf team is the validation of our philosophy that disciplined soldiers empowered with commanders' intent and equipped with the right modern tools would win any fight. And Grey Wolf's motto is to win every fight. And so I think that's probably the best takeaway that we came is, we decided to focus on what we could focus on, build discipline, communicate my intent in the best way, clearest way possible to the team, arm them with the right tools, and see what they could do, and the team delivered.
Yeah, no, I agree, Ziggy. Great rotation. Had so much fun. Ops group, myself personally, Sergeant Major Zaragoza, had a fabulous time with your team. I mean, the truly exponential learning that we watched over the 10 days of rotation, disciplined soldiers start to finish. Everybody out there to fight and win makes our hearts warm. We loved being on Team Grey Wolf during the rotation, but at the same time, I think walk away with some things that both less so the organization, but more the Army has some well-defined problems now that we need to work on. So we've probably overstayed our welcome. I don't think anybody wants to listen to colonels talk this much, but I'm going to give you closing thoughts on any thoughts or advice for brigades on their way to Europe, or here to tackle the problem set we present at JMRC. So, sir, the floor is yours for any closing comments.
Yeah, it's no secret or surprise what my message is going to be. We've said it over and over again, and I think that's why maybe it's stuck in the brigade, is because the team is so tired of me saying it over and over again. But control what you can control. This is a tougher environment to train and sustain an armored force in for all kinds of reasons. So I would, recommend spending energy on the things that you can affect. And like I said, we chose discipline and maintenance climate, and we found that those things that's paid off for us in droves. I would say, prepare for a transparent and lethal battlefield. This is, that's not a new talking point. We've, as an Army, I think, been reflecting on this for many years now. Yeah.
My job is to make what was extraordinary for your rotation ordinary for your rotation.
But like I said, we've been talking about it conceptually, but we haven't been able to replicate it actually, this transparent battlefild. I think maybe until this rotation. I mean, I haven't been part of all the other rotations, but
this is as close as we've gotten.
It was wild and an awesome learning opportunity. And so I would say train your soldiers to prioritize survivability and know and understand the impacts that's going to have on other warfighting functions and other aspects of this thing. So because it will have impacts. And lastly, I say, if you come to Germany, in particular JMRC, embrace the opportunity to test your team and the soldiers, because, they're going to give you everything that you ask for and more. So thanks so much, CJ. It was an awesome rotation.
Thanks, Ziggy. Appreciate it. That's all we've got from Hohenfels. Until next time, train to win.